Hello and welcome back to the Faith and Culture Show. I'm Catherine Camp, your hostess for the show. This is where we really get down to educating ourselves about our culture in order to engage others with conversations that count, conversations with an eternal perspective. Well, many of us have been hearing so much about the economy lately. We've seen the prices at grocery stores rise and rise. I know that people are trying to buy homes and it's so far out of reach right now. This is not the America that many of us grew up in. And so I am so honored to have on the show today Dr. Gale Pooley. He teaches U.S. economic history at Utah Tech University. He's taught economics and statistics at Brigham Young University, Hawaii Al Faisal University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Brigham Young University, Idaho, Boise State University, and the College of Idaho. Dr. Pooley serves on the board of humanprogress.org. Dr. Pooley earned his BBA in economics at Boise State University. He did graduate work at Montana State University and completed his PhD at the University of Idaho. His dissertation topic was on the knowledge acquisition preferences of the CEOs of the Fortune 500. And I hope I'm saying that correctly. We'll ask him in a minute. In 1986, he founded Analytics Group, a real estate valuation and consulting firm. The Analytics Group has performed over 5,000 appraisals in the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. Dr. Pooley has held professional designations from the Appraisal Institute, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and the CCIM Institute. He has published articles in National Review, Human Progress, the American Spectator, FEE, the Utah Bar Journal, the Appraisal Journal, Kiet, I'll ask him, and Real Clear Markets. Dr. Pooley is a fellow with the Discovery Institute, and that's where I found him, and he serves on the board of humanprogress.org. He also serves on the Foundation of Economic Education Faculty Network and is a scholar with Hawaii's Grassroots Institute. He is also a member of the Mont Pelerin Society. He has presented at Freedom Fest and the COSM Technology Conference. I want to welcome to the Faith and Culture Show, Dr. Gale Pooley. Welcome to the Faith and Culture Show, Dr. Pooley. I know this is going to be a very educational conversation about our culture and economics.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Did everything I say, is that current?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. See what I said earlier? You're very busy. You have a lot of tentacles out there, which is important. We need good people advising others right now and always, really. I know we're going to talk about your book probably later on, because I want people to be aware of this new book that you've written. But I would like to just start out. You're a Christian, and I want to find out where your perspective is and how you got into this side of, I guess, the socio-economic world, kind of.
Right. Very good. The socioeconomic world. Well, when I was in 10th grade, I had to read this book. And I don't know if you've ever heard about this book, a little paperback, but this book written by a biologist at Stanford, actually, Dr. Paul Ehrlich. And in the book, he makes these claims. I mean, I can just read you the first line in the book is, "The battle to feed all of humanity is over." He wrote the book in 1968. So he said, in the 1970s, the world will undergo famines. Hundreds of millions of people are going to starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. So I had to read this it was like a history class in 10th grade. I get done reading and it's like, wow, I come from a family of 6. I mean, we had 6 kids in our family. I thought, my parents have caused this problem of too many people on the planet. And so very troubled about that. And we were asked to read some other books, and everything I read is this idea that that there are too many people on the planet, that we're going to run out of resources. We're going to have this huge crash. And so very troubled about that through the 1970s. And if you lived through the 70s, it was a tough decade in terms of just what was going to happen. And then in 1980, I graduate and I go off to graduate school, and I meet a guy named Julian Simon, and he'd written this book, and he'd also challenged Paul Ehrlich on this book. And he said, look, you're making this argument, but we need to look at the evidence. What does actually the evidence say? And he had gone back and looked at every commodity he could find, all the prices of all these commodities as far back as he could find data for. And he said, it's interesting because as population has increased, the prices of all these things are going down. How could it be that if we live on a finite planet with finite resources, that if you add more people, things would get cheaper? If we're running out, things should be getting more expensive. At the same time, he said, our life expectancy is increasing. Why is it if we're running out that people are living longer and longer? So he puts those facts on the table, challenges Ehrlich. And Ehrlich, of course, him and Ehrlich are having this back and forth, very public contention over what's going to happen. And he finally just throws up his hands and says, why don't we bet? And so he offers to bet. And he said, look, Professor Ehrlich, you pick any commodity, and it's got to be for more than 1 year, and I'll bet you that the price is going to go down, the adjusted price, the inflation-adjusted price. And so Paul Ehrlich and two of his colleagues, they picked 5 commodities: copper, chromium, nickel, tin, and tungsten, and they entered into this 10-year bet for $1,000. So if the price had gone up by more than 1,000, then Paul Ehrlich or Julian Simon would have to pay them the difference. If it went down, then Ehrlich and his team would have to pay Simon the difference. So during the 80s, everybody's kind of, okay, what's going to happen here? And so everybody kind of in economics, they're kind of curious about this bet. They're watching this bet. Well, 1990 comes along, and Simon gets a check for $576.07 from Paul Ehrlich. So remember, the 1980s, we added 850 million people to the planet. It's the largest increase in human population in history. So population's doing this, but the inflation-adjusted prices of these 5 commodities on the average had fallen by 36%. So how is that possible that you could have that many more people, but these prices fall of these non-renewable resources? And Professor Simon, he was actually an economist, professor of economics, and he developed this theory. And he said, resources, atoms by themselves are not resources. You have to add knowledge to atoms, and when you do that, then they become resources. And we do have a finite number of atoms, but there doesn't appear to be any upper limit in terms of the knowledge that's discoverable out there. And we are discovering new knowledge at a much faster rate than we're making more people. And then he went to the next level. He said, what is the source of knowledge discovery? It's human beings. If you want more prosperity, you have to be in favor of more human beings. So this was just a real beautiful theory, and the data supported that theory. So we're going along, and I go off and do my work and my career, but always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, he was really right. And then one day I'm on Twitter, and I see this tweet from a guy who said, I'm doing an update on the Simon Ehrlich bet. And he said, this is what I found. And so I reach out to this guy, and thank heavens for Twitter, because, I found this guy. And he actually is my co-author, Dr. Marion Tupy at the Cato Institute. And so we started to talk, and pretty soon we said, well, we should write a paper together about these commodities. So the 2 criticisms of this bet was it only covered five resources, and it was only for 10 years. So we said, why don't we broaden that? We're going to look at 50 resources. So we looked at oil, we looked at food, we looked at these original minerals, we looked at materials. We went from crude oil to zinc. We look at the price of shrimp, the price of chicken, the price of lumber, the price of cotton. We started in 1980 and we looked at from 1980 to 2018. This was a few years ago when we did the initial study. And what did we find? Well, first of all, population over that period of time had increased by over 70%. I think it was like 72%. But the prices of all of these commodities on the average had fallen by 70%. That's like every time you add more people, the price goes down. It's like, how could that be? Well, once again, our real resource is knowledge, and it's human beings that discover, create, and share this knowledge with one another. And that's how we lift each other out of poverty. So we write this paper, and it was about these commodities. And then some people said, well, have you looked at anything else? And you should write a book about this. And so we spent the next couple of years looking at all these other things. We looked at basic commodities, but we looked at food prices. We looked at the price of like washing machines. We went back as far as we could with some of our data goes back to 1850, and everywhere we looked, we see this thing of abundance. And we titled the book Superabundance, and we gave that a technical definition. Superabundance is when our resources are increasing faster than population. So if population grows by 5%, resources abundance are growing by 10%. They're growing much faster. And we measure that abundance by what we call the time price. There's a money price, so we can measure things in dollars and cents with money, but there's also what we call a time price. And a time price is simply how much time does it take you to earn the money to buy that thing? And that's expressed in hours and minutes. So if I go back to 1980 and say, it took me 2 hours to earn the money to buy a pizza, but today it only takes me an hour, I actually get 2 pizzas for the price of one. So my pizza abundance has doubled. I've had 100% increase in pizza abundance. It's really our time that we should think about, and what do we get for 24 hours in a day? So we use time prices. We look at all these commodities and all these products. We write this book, and that's what you're seeing now is the product of that effort.
Yeah, I'll put it up again. Superabundance. Yes, and it's interesting that, God's timing is always perfect. So I'm not surprised that because of God, that this would come out at a time when we have incredible inflation happening, but I believe that it's been manufactured. Would you like to talk to that? Am I wrong?
We've always suffered from monetary inflation. And remember, there's a cause of inflation and the effect of inflation. The cause of inflation is when governments create money, print money essentially, much faster than we're able to create goods and services. And so you got this money all over the place, and the reaction is, wow, it's easy to get money. And if you're providing goods, it's like, I've got all these people lined up that want to buy my product, and I only have a certain amount of product I can produce today. What should I do? Well, you should raise the price. And so we've had this monetary inflation occurring, and we've always had these periods of that inflation, really. What's more interesting is what's happening in terms of innovation, because as long as your hourly rate of income is increasing faster than prices, the time price is going down. And so we do worry about inflation, the effect of inflation, but we're really concerned about, are we continuing to innovate? And we define innovation as the discovery of valuable new knowledge. Are we able to continue to discover valuable new knowledge and create this wealth for one another? And that's really what we think should be the focus of our measurements. And yeah, we've had inflation for the last couple of years, and it does cause distortions. But fundamentally underlying, if you go back in time and look at the time price you had to pay for a Bic pen for example, or a gallon of milk. And what it's done over the last 20 years, it is much more abundant than it's ever been. We live today in a time where we've never had more abundance around, more material abundance around us.
It's true. We do. We have a selection. We go to the grocery store, especially here in the United States, and sometimes it's a problem. If you have, if you're sitting there looking at all of the different variety of things, it takes longer, but that's okay. I'm not going to complain about that. Like you said, that's innovation. That's people doing different things with the same product. And
when I go to Costco, it's like they should raise the prices in here. There's too many people in here. It's just like, and I mean, as economists, we always say if there's a long line of people, it means that evidently your price is too low, and we've just got this abundance all around us. So one of our other concerns, quite frankly, is just this culture of scarcity that we're facing today. This idea that we're damaging, we're going to run out of resources. We're damaging the earth. It's a bad time to have children. It's going to be really expensive, and I worry about this. And our concern was this message that young people are getting about, how difficult economically it's going to be to have children. There's just no basis in facts to support that. Everywhere you look, it's like things have never been more abundant in terms of how much time it takes you to earn the money to buy that thing than today. And to think that you wouldn't have children because you're worried about running out of resources in the future, that's just not based in evidence. It's an ideology, not evidence.
And where is that coming from?
It's easy for human beings. We have this bias because this bias has allowed us to survive when something's frightening to kind of overreact to it, because the overreactors survived. If I hear a little noise in the bush and I think, well, it could be a rattlesnake or a bunny, and I run away and I find out it's a bunny, it's like, well, I made a mistake, but I'm still alive. But if I hear the noise and I think, well, it's a bunny, and it turns out to be a rattlesnake, I don't survive. So we have this tendency as human beings to kind of really magnify risk because it gets our attention. You think about the media today, and I would challenge you to watch 30 minutes of a news program and see if there's anything that they speak about that is not designed with the intention to make you afraid. Because fear gets our attention. Fear allows you to get eyeballs. You can sell those eyeballs of attention to advertisers. So it's this cycle of keeping people afraid, because if we do that, we can earn a lot of advertising revenue and we can sell our products. So you have that thing happening. But I also think you have this challenge of a worldview that people have, where they look at the earth and they have this false definition of what a resource is. Most people think, well, I always say it's the Thanos ideology, where he says the universe is finite. Well, yeah, we agree that the planet does have a number of atoms on it, but then he says its resource is finite. That's where he makes the mistake, because atoms without knowledge really have no economic value. It's when you add knowledge to these atoms that they become valuable. I use this analogy. Try it on your audience here.
Okay. How
many keys are in a piano? Well, there's 88 keys in a piano. So then the follow-up question is, well, how many songs are in a piano? And it's actually a trick question, because there's really no songs in a piano. The songs are in the minds of human beings. And how many songs can you create with 88 keys? That potential is really infinite. Now, some songs are better than other songs, but the potential to create that, music, and that's really what a piano's purpose is to help people create music. And that potential to create music with just that fixed number of keys is infinite. And that's the distinction between atoms and knowledge. The piano is atoms, the music is knowledge. And if we can move people away from thinking only in atoms, this material world of physical things, to thinking about the world is really made up of knowledge, and it's knowledge that really benefits us. And once you do that, then suddenly you see this potential. We and the subtitle of our book is we live on this infinitely bountiful planet, because knowledge really doesn't have any kind of upper limits to it. So
go ahead. I know I was going to ask you something, but please don't stop your train of thought.
The train stopped.
Okay. When you're talking about of course, God would not leave us to fight over water. He knows everything. So my thought is, okay, well, in our world today, suddenly we have this computer world with AI coming on the scene. And I recently watched an episode of, I saw Elon Musk speaking with President Trump. And they were talking about the need for lots of energy for AI because of the computers and how they're going to need all of this. I guess I know that microchips require a lot of water, but they're talking about energy. So how energy is produced is probably going to have to change. I just see this cognitive dissonance with all of these electric cars and people, getting away from natural gas. And I'm thinking, well, gas, they've made it very clean to burn, very economical for us. So even people who don't have, upper level jobs can afford a car and to put gas in their car, right, and to get from one place to another. But you start doing electric cars, you still need that energy, and you still start burning coal. It's just somewhere where you're not seeing how it's produced. It's still produced. Right. So have you all in your brain trust there that all these wonderful people you get to deal with, have you talked about this energy?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I always say I'd love to buy a Tesla. As soon as Elon can make one that's solar powered, I'd drive it. If there's a solar panel on the top of that Tesla that never runs out of power, that will run night and day, I'm ready to buy one. But this idea that we can actually move forward in a solar or what they generally refer to as a renewable resource energy base, it's like, we have got this incredible amount of fossil fuel on the planet today that has lifted us out of poverty. The reason that we live in air conditioning and we can heat, we live in this climate controlled world with lights and cars and transportation. It's all really because of this fossil fuel. And yeah, there are trade-offs where we have to deal with, carbon and so forth, other issues. But if you're really serious about energy, you've got to be in favor of nuclear power. Nuclear power has no CO2. And you talk to these people who want to get rid of fossil fuels, and you say, well, what about nuclear? And they don't want to say a word about it. So it's like, are you really interested in finding a new source of energy that's clean, or are you interested in fewer people on the planet? And that's fundamentally what you get to when you really drill down in many of these arguments, is that they believe there are just too many people on the planet. And back again to this Thanos fallacy. it's interesting in that movie that he was trying to find this glove that he could put these stones on so he could get rid of half the life in the universe. If you had that kind of power, wouldn't you want to use it to create more resources, not destroy life?
Wow.
So we have this ability. We all have this infinity glove, and that is our ability as human beings to create and to discover and to share. And we have this ability to make this pie bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, the pie is getting bigger much faster than the population, which means every person that comes to the earth today not only brings their own slice. I always think in pizzas because my students, they think in pizzas. They bring their own slice of pizza, and they bring pizza to share with everybody else. It's like, wouldn't you want those type of people to come to the planet? Well, that's what the evidence is telling us, is that you increase the population and everybody's better off because the time prices of all of these products are going down. Why is that? Because we were created to be creative in the image of our Creator. And if people have the freedom to innovate, they'll do amazing things. And there's another fascinating aspect to this, is we don't know who those people are. And that means we got to treat everyone with dignity and respect. We don't know who the next Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Mozart, we don't know who they are. And it's only when they have this opportunity to manifest themselves in their gifts, in the world that they're discovered. And then they benefit the rest of us. So the ideology that we live on this fixed resource, that we're running out, that there's too many people. Elon's very, very big on this. He goes, no, there's not enough people. We've got plenty of resources. There's not enough people. We go back to this water question. Desalination is just incredibly cheap today. People don't realize how cheap it is. You can desalinate 6 gallons of water for a penny. Israel is actually the leading innovator on desalination. So we're going to have plenty of these. We got plenty of these physical resources. What we don't have is we don't have a mindset that says, let's go out and be creative. Let's see what we can do, and allow people to see what they can discover and share with the rest of us, and treat human beings with, this kind of this Judeo-Christian ethic that every human being comes to the planet with a mouth to feed, but they have 2 hands and they've got a mind with billions of potential ideas there that they could share with the rest of us. So being able to shift that view toward, look, we don't, resources are knowledge, and knowledge doesn't have any upper limit. And then the second thing is to think about how we don't live in this world of scarcity. Yes, things are scarce, but what's interesting, and this is really what economics studies, is how do we transform scarcities into abundances? How did we go from these things being very scarce? And when we say scarce, we can also think about how did they go from being really expensive to being really, really cheap, really affordable. We just did a little study on TVs. The first big screen TV was introduced in 1997. Sony and Samsung introduced this 42-inch flat screen TV. It was $15,000 in 1997. Today, wow, it's like $100. You can get one for $130 at Walmart or Best Buy, and it's like, how did it go from $15,000 down to less than $150? It's because you allowed this innovation to happen, and then you allowed people to buy it, and everybody who is participating in this process made the prices go down because we learned how to make these things. Every time we made one of these things, we learned a little bit how to make them better, how to lower the cost, how to make them faster, and that's what we're benefiting. And that's true with lots and lots of products and services.
And okay, and what we have different countries. We were talking earlier before we started to record, and different countries run their countries in different ways. The United States has been a very productive nation, amazingly so. 250 years about as a nation, and we have surpassed anything in producing goods and services around the world. What, if it's more people with more ideas and the freedom to research and discover, what sort of economy should we be looking for in order to have this wonderful abundance that happens with brain trust?
Yeah, I think the first thing is we have to think about entrepreneurs, these individuals that have this really remarkable talent to kind of see the future and then to create that future. Steve Jobs was able to kind of envision what he could do. Elon Musk, I know he's kind of had some issues in his life, but fundamentally this guy was able to envision this idea as, let's put satellites around the planet so everybody can have internet. So he launches all of these satellites. He's doing this thing with his SpaceX rocket company, and he's reduced the cost of putting a pound of material into orbit by a factor of 20 over the last, since he started SpaceX. So what used to, what used to cost me to put 1 pound in space, I can now put 20 pounds into space. So he's been on these major learning curves. We call them learning curves. He's been on these major learning curves where the idea is the more I can make of this thing, the more I can learn. And the more I learn, the lower my costs will go down. If my costs go down, the price can go down. If the price goes down, I can sell more. And so it's this virtuous kind of a cycle of innovation and learning and pricing that we once we come to understand that, we then need to have policies that encourage everyone to get on learning curves. What can you learn today that will help you and everyone around you as you share that new knowledge that you've discovered? So being able to do that, the United States was this very unique place. We had lots and lots of physical resources around us, but we also had a culture that was very entrepreneur friendly. Go out and try this thing. Yeah, you might fail, but get back up and try it again. So that kind of a culture, this American culture, attracted these people that were entrepreneurial risk takers from all over the planet. Let's go to America. We're going to have this freedom of opportunity. We would seek this place because we had economic opportunity. We also had this political freedom and religious freedom. So it was kind of, in my view, it was really tied together. You go to this place that was based on this idea that human beings were created in the image of their creator, and they were given these fundamental rights by a creator, not the government: life, liberty, and this pursuit of happiness. And that pursuit of happiness, it not only includes my pursuit of being able to practice my beliefs the way I felt, my conscience was telling me, but it also meant this freedom of action in the economic world. I'm going to go out and try to make something, and I'm going to try to sell it. And maybe if I can't sell it, I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to continue to work on this until I can come up with this creation that's going to benefit everyone. So we've had this culture of creativity. Freedom to create is really what I call it. Not only political freedom, but we had economic freedom. You put those two together and you get this powerful effect. And then if you have population, then it really grows. And people say, well, your model says that we need more people. Our model says you need more people with the freedom to innovate.
Well, that's the end of part 1 of episode 153 with Dr. Gale Pooley. I hope you have found this informative and as enjoyable as I have, as the economy affects us all. No matter whether you're an entrepreneur or you are someone who works for an entrepreneur or a business, small or large, the economy affects us all. It's been fascinating to learn from Dr. Pooley the difference between capitalism and socialism, and the belief in population control and finite resources. We really have to trust that God has put us here in a world where we can figure it out. We're not going to run out of resources if we are creative and we use our minds to help humanity. So I hope you tune in for part 2, which will be in a few days. It will be released. And I also want to remind you that Dr. Pooley does have a website for his new book where there are short video clips about the book that will let you know a little bit more about what's in there. You can find it at superabundance.com. He has also been kind enough to ask the audience to ask questions. If you send me some questions or put them in the comment box, what I can do is pull them all together and then ask him back, and he can answer your questions. He's a valuable resource to us because he looks at things from a biblical worldview lens and believes in creating the way God has created us to create. I hope to see you at part 2. Until then, keep reading and understanding who God is.